celebration. Simcha, Simcha, the celebration of life.
Hi from me, Jared Epstein, and welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. In today's show, we look at the symbolism of language, we attend a workshop for dementia sufferers, and we explore the world of naive art. Language, particularly the Hebrew language, is of paramount significance in Judaism. And today, Batya Bricker concludes our series on signs and symbols by discussing what the symbolism of language means to Jews around the world.
Today we're going to look at language as a symbol. Language is a means of expression, of communication. But in the case of Hebrew, Israeli Hebrew or modern Hebrew, it's as much a symbol as it is a means of expression. Jews throughout the ages would have spoken the lingua franca of the place in which they lived. So in Babel, in Babylon, they would have spoken Aramaic. In the Spanish countries, Ladino. In the European countries where most South African Jews come from, they would have spoken Yiddish, which was a hybrid Hebrew, German, Polish combination language. And they would have used Hebrew for liturgical and religious use only. But it was a language that would be familiar to all Jews, and this is important for later. The term modern Hebrew is problematic for scholars, because modern implies a linear connection between the ancient language and a kind of progression or development to the new language, which was not the case with Hebrew. Because when you're talking about an ancient language, a religious language, there are a whole lot of words that you will not find in the Bible. Eggplant, tomato, electricity, television. All these you won't find as part of the language, and so it very much has to be created. The man who founded the Hebrew language was a man called Eliezer ben Yehuda. Eliezer ben Yehuda was part of the cultural Zionists who believed in creating a cultural center for the Jewish people, that culture would be the center of the Jewish people rather than a place. And so they believed very firmly in things like language, song, dance. He felt very strongly that Hebrew should become the national language of Israel and focused very much on establishing it as such. He established the Va'ad Halashon, which was the Committee for Languages, and they began to formulate what the language of Hebrew would look like for everyday use. Of course, there was a lot of dissent about this. How could you use a holy tongue to describe your prosaic matters at the market? But they forged ahead as part of the new Zionism, the idea of this new Jew establishing a new kind of identity as a Jewish people. So they put together and sourced words from all over the place. They used the Bible as a source. An example, like a word like chashmal actually comes from the Bible. So they looked to the Bible to get certain words. So the word electricity, chashmal, comes from Ezekiel, where they describe human figures that had a specific power. And in fact, up till modern day, this word was not translated in the Bible. We don't actually know what chashmal was. They were holy beings who could speak, who could sprout forth fire. And so Eliezer ben Yehuda uses this word as chashmal, as electricity in modern day Hebrew. It's important to note who he married. He married a woman called Devorah, and he had a few children, but Devorah died very young. And her dying wish was that he should marry her younger sister Paula, which he did. Very biblical, isn't it? He marries Paula, who becomes Chemda, that's her Hebrew name. And why it's important is because Chemda, long after Eliezer ben Yehuda has died, is the first person to put the Hebrew language into a dictionary. And she is the person who actually publishes it and establishes it as an official language. So Chemda was important. There have been numerous occasions in history where people have tried to revive a language or to establish a language. It's not easy. So why did it work with Hebrew where it doesn't work with anything else? Well, there were a couple of reasons. One, the immigration to Israel contained many different kinds of people, consisted of many different kinds of people coming from all over the world who spoke different languages. There was no commonality. And if you wanted to get by, you needed one common language. These people, all of these immigrants, would have been vaguely familiar with Hebrew from their religious use. And so it was a starting point. In fact, it was the only common point that they could use to communicate. And because of that, just practically, you had to buy your fish in the market. How were you going to communicate? Hebrew became something that was used as a common tool between people from many different lands. Another very important thing was because of the fundamentalism, and I know that's not a popular word now, but it was fundamentalism of a man like Eliezer ben Yehuda and the cultural Zionists. They were firm in their belief that language was the tool that would revive the Jewish people, would revive and unite the Jewish people. And so they were determined to establish it as the lingua franca of this new country, Israel. And then most importantly, they set up structures and systems to support the language. And you had writers, poets, songwriters starting to use the language as their means of expression. And that established it as a national language. I said in the beginning that it was not just a means of expression, but also a symbol. Because when you spoke Hebrew, it represented a new Israel, a new kind of Jew, not the Jew who was subject to pogroms and persecution and humbly following the rule of the land. You were now talking about a new Jew who could stand on his own 2 feet in his own country and express himself for what he was. So it was very much a symbol of nationhood. It was part of the different flavors of Zionism. Zionism had many different flavors. The most popular and the most well-known is that of Herzl, which was political Zionism that said that if you establish a state of Israel through international agreement, the rest will follow. But there were others, practical Zionism, and this is where the Labour Party in Israel comes from, that said, just settle the land and the rest will come. It was about settling the land. But then there were the cultural Zionists. And the cultural Zionists, led by Achad Ha'am, was very much part of what Eliezer ben Yehuda was also about. Achad Ha'am was the father of cultural Zionism, and it was through him that poetry, that writing, that newspapers and publishing began to happen in Hebrew. And that is when it became entrenched as a national language.
In 2016, the Union of Jewish Women realized that there was a need in the community to encourage people with dementia to continue to engage in the community in a safe and nurturing environment. They decided to form weekly group sessions which facilitated improved social participation and engagement in meaningful activities for those suffering with dementia and Alzheimer's.
The Union of Jewish Women is a non-profit organisation that's been around for 86 years and has made a huge impact in the lives of South Africans, both Jewish and the broader communities. And the importance of us being involved in everything is that we can show how just a few of us can make a huge difference and a huge impact in the lives of so many South Africans.
Hello everybody. Good morning. It's not to see you all coming here. Busy.
We started this project in July 2016 when one of the ladies from the Union of Jewish Women realized in the community that there was a need for a support group for people that have dementia and Alzheimer's.
Bev suggested that I come one Tuesday morning to the Union of Jewish Women where they had the Brain Boost group just to see what it was about. I didn't have any idea. I'd never worked with older people. And I went, that was 2 years ago, and I just loved it. I loved the people, I loved the involvement with the people, and it became a passion.
By having these groups has encouraged, well, it's taken away the loneliness from these people, because I know so many of them just sit at home alone, and the family themselves don't know what to do with them. I just found that they come, and they sometimes when they come to our groups, they actually become very different people. They're friendly. When you speak to the carers, they'll tell you at home that they're so aggressive and they don't want to do anything. They come to our groups and you wouldn't think that they're like that at all.
My husband took ill 3 to 4 years ago, and I heard about silver lining. It took a long time for me to make the decision to come, but when I came, I realized how wonderful it is and how good it is for him. It keeps him busy, it keeps his mind active, and he just loves coming. He loves Bev Cohn.
Our occupational therapist is Kim Levitt, and she specialises actually dealing with a lot of seniors. So she's amazing, she really is. And then I work with two other who happen to be friends of mine. I mean, and they didn't even know each other before we started this group. They were both looking for something to do. So I just kind of said to them, come along for the morning and see what it's like.
People with Alzheimer's and dementia was a new thing for me. I knew people, you know, who had the condition, but I'd never actually worked with them. And when I came in, I felt a bit apprehensive in the beginning, but most of them are just the most wonderful, warm, kind, loving people that it just gives you a sense of achievement. You feel like you're giving something back to them. You know, they like to be touched, they like to be held, like to be spoken to. And for me, I felt it was just a major thing to be able to open up and be warm and kind towards them.
So we're going to try some music. It's important to do movement. Every time you use both hands, you're using both sides of the brain and then both sides of the body. So we're going to keep you a little bit young. We're going to start off with just a little bit of movement, but then I'm going to add in a question or a little quiz to go with that.
As an occupational therapist, we are taught the grounding is to do as much activity and meaningful activities and purposeful activities as possible, even though one might have limitations or deficiencies. So with that skill, we can cater to different kinds of people or individuals who come to the group on different levels. So if they're able to function on a better level, we'll give them challenging tasks, and if they're able to function on a more basic level, then we'll be able to downgrade those tasks and still get them to engage and feel like they've contributed meaningfully to the morning.
We've got very low functioning people. We've got people with just the beginning of Alzheimer's. And we're not trained, but we've gauged it and assessed them. And we give them suitable activities to do.
So the puzzle like stimulates them and just gets their minds working. I mean, I'm actually amazed at how they're able to do them. I mean, they're not the most complicated puzzles. They really and truthfully aren't, but they challenge them.
Within the group, everyone's got their own place, and we do group work, but at the same time cater for the individual needs. So we're able to really extend my expertise, and my volunteers have picked up on the right approach so quickly without formal training. So also hats off to them, they're amazing.
It's basically just to keep their memories going. I mean, lots of them know that they have I can think of one gentleman in particular, knows that he has short-term memory and he gets so frustrated with himself. So we try and encourage them to say it's really not the end of the world, you know. Just try and remember this, and we try and give them ideas on how to remember the words of the words that we've given them.
What word don't you understand? S-U-R-B-E-Y-O-R.
I think the families do struggle quite a lot to accept the term of a dementia or the diagnosis of a dementia, and the individual may cope or may not cope depending on where they are in the stages of the dementia. So when they come to us and they actually see the group and they see the camaraderie and the friendship that's being built and how easy it is just to be yourself without any stigmas or attachments or diagnosis, they're really just there to be themselves, enjoy a day out instead of sitting at home for all those dull hours. So there is obviously always a little bit of anxiety or concern when they do come to the first group, but many people just settle in within the first few minutes. It's just the environment is incredible.
She enjoys the place, she's happy, and she's always willing to come here. She will be asking me, when is Wednesday? Is it to Wednesday today? Are we going tomorrow or going when? She's eager to come here.
So far since we have started coming here, it has really helped her. She's so calm, she's so happy, and she's always looking forward to coming here. She loves the groups.
Just to watch the people's faces after a very stimulating morning. They walk out and they say, thank you, this was wonderful. We have one lady that says she just wishes every day was Tuesday, that she could wake up and know that she's got something to do every single morning.
I think love and empathy and patience is the three key elements to approach an elderly, because no matter what you do, they're going to benefit, and if it's genuine, they're going to feel it straight away. It's just, and all of us are just exactly filled with that love, empathy, passion, and enthusiasm, and the results speak for themselves.
We just see them as just people that need to get out and to socialize and to be with other people and to enjoy a morning out instead of being at home. And they all enjoy it. And for us, that is the greatest joy, to see their enjoyment.
Justin Abelman started painting at the age of 10. His naive art is a manifestation of joy, taking us back into the Garden of Eden where all life began. He brings ease and modesty to his work, planting the seeds for an intimate and celebratory way of seeing the contemporary world.
I'm a very relaxed person. I love humor. I bring it into my work. I enjoy a good company, good friends. I like to laugh a lot. From a very young age, I was always creative. It's my passion. It gives me such pleasure when I paint. I love to teach. I love to share my knowledge. And I've been on this journey since 18, 19, I started painting in the genre of naive art. Naive art goes back through centuries. It's largely a lot of Eastern European countries, from Bulgaria, Romania, Yugoslavia, that sort of typical folk art, which is the sort of ground roots of naive art. I think I'm an ambassador for naive art for this country, and I want to promote naive art. I think it's an art form which is sometimes not taken seriously enough. I think it's a fun art form. It can appeal to children. It can appeal to all ages. Since my art school days, when I started doing art history, I think I was immediately attracted to Marc Chagall's work, Henry Rousseau's work, and Modigliani's work. Modigliani for the long necks and the faces, Chagall with the ethereal, dreamlike quality. It is naive in a way, the whimsical and the fun. Henry Rousseau, of course, is the grand master. He does all those beautiful tropical jungle scenes. So I'd say those three people or artists have been a great influence in my life. And I'm always very aware, because having trained as a graphic designer, I'm very aware and very visual with everything I do. I grew up in Johannesburg, in Bertrams, which was a very Jewish area at the time, and my grandparents from both sides of the family were from Lithuania and Latvia. They only spoke Yiddish, they spoke Russian, and my mother could speak and converse with them in Yiddish. I didn't understand it at all. But I love when I used to speak to my grandmother and I'd say, Boba, tell me about your youth. She'd say, we stayed in the shtetl. When we had to go to the doctor, we'd have to get a horse and cart. And by the time you got there, you'd be half dead. And I would love hearing these stories. And then Sunday nights, go to Boba's house and she would do the pickled herring and she'd bake the rye bread and the borscht. So I loved that that feeling of the Yiddishkeit, the Jewishness, the history. And I think there's a lot of Jewish feeling in my work. I think it comes from, because Chagall came from the same area my grandparents came from. I've read his autobiography, and I look at the pictures and the shtetls and the towns, and I try and capture a lot of that when I'm specifically doing a Jewish-themed painting. When I started painting, I thought I want to do something in the painting that's, people are going to say, oh, that's a Justin Abelman. And I decided to do a little red heart. Not one of my paintings doesn't have a red heart. It's symbolic of love. It's symbolic of just who I am, the heart. The Garden of Eden, it's just a space of peace, tranquility, the innocence of naive art, and the innocence of the Garden of Eden, of Adam and Eve. They didn't know anything. And naive art is very much like that. There's an innocent, a childlike feel to it. It's not childish, it's childlike. When you look at it, you want to feel good, and which hopefully I portray in my art. People smile, they laugh, they see the humor. To date, I have actually sold over 3,000 works, and they're all over the world. And it's very rewarding to know that my work is still being appreciated, it's still out there, it's still being seen by all these millions of people worldwide. And hopefully I'll paint in this art form until I can't paint anymore. To be a naive artist, a lot of it comes from here. You need the creative mind to create these images and these pictures, because without that you can't create. And often my students say, well, how long will it take me to get where you are today? And I say 30 years, 40 years. It's a lifelong journey, but I cannot teach my thoughts and my creativity. It's something which I was born with and blessed with. And when I paint a picture, I love to do the wackiness and the humor and the offness in it. And I definitely think that you need a creative mind to create these naive paintings. Not anybody can become a naive artist. It's very hard. It's a very skilled art form, and it's a very difficult art form. And more recently, the last 3 years, I've just seen my work. I think to myself, wow, I've worked so hard, and suddenly I'm reaping the rewards. It's just pure hard work, dedication, and most of all, following my passion as a naive artist.
We've reached the end of this week's episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. Let us know what you thought of this week's episode by sending us a Facebook message at Spirit Sister Productions. From me, Jared Epstein, and the Simcha team, wishing you a week of expression and participation.